happy spiritual Sunday. And I'm trying something new. I'm trying some new things on YouTube to give the viewers and my followers more of what they want and more of the parts of me that I've really kept kind of quiet being a therapist for 20 years. So, before a couple months ago, the only thing I really shared on my YouTube channel, my social media, was therapeutic content. So, I'd talk about boundaries and relationships and grief and, give some tips and ideas of how to get through certain things or understand certain psychological topics. And while that's such a big part of me, there are also other parts of me that I think would be very helpful to people to know about and to learn from. So beyond my experience as a therapist, I'm kind of showing everybody the pro-am dancer side of me, that I do pro-am ballroom dancing for many years. And the one part that I really haven't shared a whole lot of with my audience and my followers is my spiritual side. And I thought I'd share this, and whoever might benefit from hearing this story, I'm so happy for that because I've been on quite a spiritual journey the past few years. And the way that my spiritual journey unfolded and happened is pretty remarkable. And I started out very much as a skeptic, someone I believed in God and I believed in some sort of spirituality, but it wasn't something that I really understood or put a lot of attention on. And then suddenly, about 7 or 8 years ago, things started changing in my life. Some very unexplainable things happened that started to help me tap into my own spirituality. And I think in today's world, spirituality is almost become like an industry. And I see a lot of spiritual content on social media and on YouTube, and some of it is quite good, and some of it, in my view, is not good. And there's sort of two sides of spirituality. And I want to explain today, from my viewpoint, from my perspective, what spirituality actually is. And then once we understand what it is, I want to talk about how it could be helpful to you and how my spiritual journey unfolded. And I think it's something that it's very personal and it's very intimate, but I think if people hear my story, it may be helpful to them in their spiritual journey because truthfully, what is spirituality? And I think it gets a little bit bastardized out in public. And I see a lot of things on social media claiming to be spiritual. And I think that they can be kind of difficult for people who might be in a vulnerable situation. So if you just lose someone that you love and you're going through a hard time and you start looking at, let's say, the law of attraction or, mediumships, some of them are responsible and some of them are not. So as a therapist who's involved in spirituality, I thought this would be a good like warning, wake up explanation to people who are starting to look into their spirituality and understand what it is and what it isn't. So spirituality for me and in my story, spirituality is starts with you. It doesn't come from necessarily religion. So you can be religious and you can follow religion and you can be a student of religion and still not have that spiritual part of you actually open. Vice versa, you can be very into religion and be extremely spiritual, but the two are not necessarily mutually exclusive. They are two separate things. Religion is more of a set of rules and a way of thinking and, a narrative based on how to get to God, how to observe God, how to become more spiritual. And then spirituality in itself is just how do I become more connected, I suppose, to God, creator, universe, whatever it is that you believe in. Okay. The cosmos, nature, whatever, other people, and you don't really need a set of rules. No, you not really. You do not need a set of rules to connect to God. You do not need a set of rules to investigate yourself and the spiritual concepts that you're interested in. And that might mean that you read about other religions. I do. I find it fascinating. But being close to God does not require you to be religious, my opinion. Okay. To me, spirituality starts with you. And where this lines up very nicely with therapy is that if I'm doing therapy with somebody, the goal is to get someone to know themselves better and accept and love all the parts of themselves and everything they've been through for better or for worse, and come to a place of self acceptance and self love and self actualization and understanding that, I am not what I've been through. I'm not what I've done. I am. I am a spirit. I am a human being. I'm both of those things. And that happens in psychology and in therapy. And then spirituality can also be another aspect of bringing that part out of you that isn't necessarily, um, there's no real rule or way to become spiritual. So I thought I'd share my path and how my spirituality opened up and blossomed, and the spiritual gifts that I have developed, how they can be your gifts too, and how they can be helpful to you. So I've been a therapist for 18 years. I've gone through a lot of loss in my life. Okay. My father died when I was 11. Excuse me, I have allergies. My father died when I was 11 and fairly suddenly, and that was pretty traumatic. And my mother went on to raise me and my younger brother and two of my older brothers. And my oldest brother had drug problems. My younger brother I mean, all my brothers had some serious problems. And I didn't really understand this because I just loved them and I just wanted my family to be together and, be happy. And I didn't really understand all the complexities of what was going on around me. And I became very close to one of my uncles by marriage. And he really became a father figure to me. And then he died when I was 25. My aunt, his wife, died a few years before that. My grandparents, who I was very close to, died a few years before that. And then eventually my mother died. So, and then after my mother died, about 10 years after she died or so, my best friend died from cancer. So you can see throughout my life, I've been hit with, loss after loss after loss after loss. So I'm 50, but by the time I was 36, my parents were gone, my grandparents were gone, my uncle was gone. I'm not here to depress anybody, but I've been through a tremendous amount of loss, and that doesn't include, the other losses that come to us naturally through changing relationships, divorce, moving, whatever, all those things. Loss is loss, whether it's through death or whether it's through the end of a relationship. So when I was going through the thick of all this, I was very lost, and I was giving, I was still showing up and giving all of myself to my clients and giving great therapy and, sharing and working with them, and was quite successful at doing so for, at least 15 or so years. But I suppose about 6 or 7 years ago, probably about a year before COVID, I started noticing that, and I was not a spiritual person at the time. I thought, okay, there's spiritualities around, but I didn't really believe in mediumship. I thought, it was a bunch of BS, and I believed in a higher power, but that's about it. That's about it. And but I always felt that life was amazing and mysterious and beautiful, and I couldn't understand how, a tree or a flower could grow, because I understood the science behind it, but what is that life force that, makes flowers bloom and, makes things grow and makes our heart beat? I was always very curious about that, but I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it. It was just something that was a wonder to me. And I had been told over the years as a therapist, my clients would always ask me, like, are you psychic? Like, how did you know that? Or there's something different about you. And there's something, and I always felt that I had this connection to, I suppose, something spiritual. I just didn't know what it was or understand it. And I didn't really care about it either. It just was. I always knew that I had a very strong intuition, that I shocked people a lot by the things that I said, that I had knowledge of things that, surprised people. But other than that, that was about the extent of it. So as time went on, I was in a relationship with a chiropractor for about 4 years, and he was not spiritual at all either. And he was, used to regular basic medical training from his training, and he was a wonderful chiropractor. And but he didn't have much spiritual belief in healing, and frankly, I didn't. I really didn't either. So I collected crystals because I thought they were pretty. So I was attracted to crystals, but I didn't believe that they had any healing power or nothing like that. So around the time when we were dating, I really missed my mom. And he'll come into the story later. I really missed my mom, and my mother died of cancer, and I was taking care of her at the end of life. And, no matter how good of a job you do as a caretaker, you always wonder, were they okay? Did I do enough? Did I do the right thing? And, that was always, and I really just wish I could talk to her and just hear her say, Elizabeth, you did enough. You did a good job. You did it right. So a friend of mine mentioned to me, hey, I know this medium. You should talk to her. Her name is Katie. She's amazing. And here's her number. So I took the number and I thought, this is probably going to be bullshit, and I'm all over social media. She could find out a lot about me just from, I was so skeptical. So when I called her for an appointment, I wouldn't even give her my last name because I wanted to see if this was legit or not. So I make the appointment with her, and in my mind, I'm hoping to connect with my mother, but I don't want to tell her that because then it won't feel like it's real. I wanted evidence. I wanted evidence that my mom was really the one talking to me. So I had the session with her, and to make a very long story short, she blew my mind. And talking with her was like talking to, I mean, she knew intimate details between me and my mom that only we knew through her death. And so she was really able to help me. That experience completely changed me because I thought to myself, well, if this woman can get this kind of information that only me and my mother knew, then not only is this a legitimate mediumship experience, but that means that my mother is still alive and she's still able to contact, but I just don't know where from, from a different realm. So I started becoming obsessed with this. I watched every podcast about mediumship. I watched hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of interviews with people who had near death experiences. I started researching and reading and watching, and it became like really an obsession of mine. And I was trying to understand, what is there beyond this? What is life after death and what is spirituality? And I don't understand all this. So as I immersed myself in all this information, I started training with different people. So I trained with the medium who connected me to my mother. So I wound up doing a lot of readings with her and training with her. And she felt that I had spiritual gifts that I wasn't tapping into, that I was a medium if I wanted to be, that I could do this work. And I thought, that's ridiculous. But whatever, I listened. And then I was very drawn to energy healing, but I didn't know what energy healing was. I just thought, wow, isn't that cool that you could heal with energy? And I always felt like this force running through my body. I used to feel a lot of tingling in my hands, and I would just have an intuitive knowing about how to help somebody, how to heal somebody. I just knew, but I would never actually do it because I thought people think I'm crazy. So here I am absorbing all this information. I'm now training with the medium. I'm training with an energy reader in California weekly. And, I'm full-time therapist. So I'm busy, and I'm exploring and I'm investigating and all these things. So I still don't quite understand how it works. But then this happened. So I was away. I was out of the country with my then boyfriend, and we were out of the country in Italy, and we were at this beautiful place. And we woke up in this beautiful, beautiful place in Italy, and he couldn't move. He had arthritis in his neck and his back, and he was locked, and he couldn't get out of bed. And he was like, I can't believe this. We traveled all this way and we spent all this money and I can't even enjoy, I cannot, he would just couldn't get out of bed. So something came over me and said, you can heal him. It wasn't, I didn't hear a voice. It wasn't anything like that. It was just a knowing. I know how to heal him. So I told him, you know what? Don't worry. I'm going to heal you. And he was like, what? I'm like, I'm telling you, I'm going to heal you. So I just said, turn over. And I laid my hands on his back where I was intuitively being told, put your hands here, put your hands here, put your hands there. I was just knowing exactly what to do. I did it, and 20 minutes later, he was up and moving, and he was shocked because he was not a believer in spirituality and definitely not spiritual healing. So I was really excited, and I didn't know how I did it. I just knew exactly what to do. I knew exactly where to put my hands. I knew exactly what to do just just by chance. And this I knew was a connection to spirituality. Someone or something was guiding me and giving me the information of exactly what I needed to do to heal this man and get him moving. And so I listened and I did it. So from this point on in my story, you can see where the beginning of spirituality, of tapping into it, is listening to that inner voice. I could have, when I was in Italy with him, said, "Oh, that's crazy. I'm not listening to that. We'll have to call a doctor." Or I had the choice to listen to my inner knowing, which we all have, that inner knowing, that inner voice. And I chose to do something about it. I chose to listen to my inner voice, not to an outside being telling me, Elizabeth, do this. My inside, my own voice, my heart telling me, this is how you can heal him. And from that point on, I was healing him all the time. Now, it was just something between him and I didn't tell anyone that I could do this because, my family is not at all spiritual. They have none. They would think I was crazy. So I never told anyone, and it was just between me and him. So as this skill started developing, I started offering it to clients and to friends. And I started really healing people. And one of the most significant healing experiences I had was a friend of mine was very suicidal. And he was writing a note and everything. And I said, when I heard this, I said, get your ass over to my house. I want you to show up here every day for the next 2 weeks and just let me do Reiki on you and just close your eyes and lay down. And I did it. And his depression like really lifted and he was no longer in the suicidal state. So, am I saying it was just me? I don't know. But everything together worked. And my gifts, my energy healing just kept getting stronger and stronger. And I started to get more confidence in it. So I shared it with more people. And then I even started offering it as a service in my practice. And my clients just loved it. And what I started doing, a lot of times when we think of energy healing, we think of putting our hands on the physical body and healing the physical body. And while I might do that for my closest friends and family, it wasn't something I wanted to do on strangers or people I didn't know. And at that point, my practice was becoming pretty virtual because of COVID. So I wasn't having clients in my space anymore. It was all online. So one of my mentors said, "You are a Reiki healer." And I'm like, "What is Reiki?" I don't even know what Reiki is. And she was like, "You need to take the Reiki courses. You're already doing it, but you need attunements and you need to learn, blah, blah." So I just said, "Okay, whatever. I'll do it. Why not?" You can never learn too much. So Katie, the medium who originally gave me my first spiritual experience, then trained me at all three levels of Reiki, and I became a Reiki master. And this was many years ago. And that was very hard because, when in order to carry spiritual gifts that really work, there is a responsibility for how you live your life in the world. Because in order to be connected to the universe and all the gifts that do lie there for all of us, you have to fix yourself. You have to clear out negative things from your life and you have to grow and clear your energy field and really operate at the highest vibration frequency that you can. And frequency, when people talk about frequency, they're really talking about emotion, which as a therapist, that was my specialty. So it wasn't about oh, I have to be happy all the time, but it was more about I needed to go inward into my life and really look at anything that wasn't really good for me and encouraging growth and remove that. So that meant relationships, patterns of behavior, ways of thinking. And this was difficult. This was really difficult. So, unbeknownst to me, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I have these spiritual gifts and I can help people. This is wonderful. But then, in order for me to carry these gifts, I had to do a complete haul over of my own life. And I wasn't expecting that. And it was difficult. So, when you really have spiritual gifts and you really are developing them, it's a huge responsibility, not only to other people, but also to yourself, because you have to do a lot of inner work in order to be a clear enough vessel to allow that life force energy to really flow through you to another for healing. Anyone can do it. I believe that. I think, I was given this gift for whatever reason, but I chose to develop it. And as I was developing my Reiki skills, I call it really just energy healing, then other gifts started opening up. So when I started doing, long Reiki sessions on people, I would get these pictures in my mind of people and scenes happening. And one woman I was working on, I saw a woman being thrown down a staircase while I was doing Reiki on her. And I said, this might sound kind of crazy, but when I was working on you, I saw a woman being thrown down a staircase. Does this mean anything to you? And she immediately burst into tears and said, oh my God, my mother was thrown down the stairs by my father and broke her neck when I was a little girl. And they were in a very abusive relationship, and I witnessed it. And it's a big trauma for me. So, anyway, as I was working in people's energy fields, I started picking up on stories and emotions and things that they were experiencing in order to continue to help them heal. So, what started out as energy healing for my boyfriend, who was had a back and neck ache, eventually turned into this other skill where I was really working with people's energy fields, their emotional energy, which is the life force within us. And I started to understand what spirituality really is. And if I could think of one sentence, spirituality is connecting to the innermost parts of you that are aligned with the most exquisite parts of the universe. So you could think of it as a path, right? So most of us just live like here on the surface. But when you're working with spirituality, you go underneath the surface into our emotional and emotional energetic fields, which we all have around us. And we look at what emotions are flowing through us. And in today's spiritual jargon, they're called frequencies, but they're really just what emotions are you feeling, right? If you're feeling depressed, that's a lower frequency. It's not bad, it's just a different frequency than joy and happiness is a very bright, very high frequency, fast moving energy. And so when we become spiritual, we understand how we are connected to other people, how we're connected to the universe, the stars, the moon, nature, not religion, but more into understanding how the miracles flow through us and through the atmosphere, and that we have the power to tap into any of that at any time. What it doesn't mean is that you can predict the future. I don't believe in that, because we all have free will and we can change things whenever we feel like it. So I don't think that it's healthy to predict the future. And, I've never tried to do that, and I don't really want to know the future. And it doesn't mean you automatically get lottery numbers and all the answers to everything. That's not how spirituality works, and that's not how spiritual gifts work. Spiritual gifts that you can develop and that you possess are there to help and serve humanity and nature and animals and life, just life. But it doesn't mean that you get all the answers to everything. And it doesn't mean that you, as a healer who carry these gifts, get extra special treatment. We don't. In fact, sometimes in order to clear out our energetic body, we go through a lot of trauma and a lot of very quick changes in order to maintain a higher frequency. And in the real world, that's a lot of chaos. So when you do meet someone who really truly has real spiritual gifts that they work on and they develop, these are not people who, haven't been through it. These are people who've been through a lot. They know how it feels. They're very sensitive to the feelings of other people, and they are here, the good ones, the legitimate ones are here to help other people connect to their own spiritual gifts, to empower you to learn how to be your own healer, and also to help you heal, right? So when I tap into people's emotions, whether it's through talk therapy or energetic healing, I am doing so in service to help people heal, to give them that guidance, give them that extra push. So, therapy, and it also gives me the ability to show people and speak about parts of people that they can't quite see themselves because they're too kind of swallowed up in their own, mishigas of what's happening in their life. When you're grieving or you're going through a lot of transitions and you're anxious and you're going through a hard time, that's the hardest time to really listen to your own inner voice because you're in your head worried all the time. Worried, am I, what's the next step? How do I get through this? What do I do? Oh my God, we suffer, we therapists and healers suffer just like everybody else, maybe even a little bit more. It's possible, not more than everybody, but maybe more than the average person because we're called to face so much about ourselves in order to properly serve other people. So when you're looking for a healer, a spiritual, healer, be use discernment because I've come across a lot of people that claim to be healers and they really don't know what they're doing. Not only have they not had training, but they don't have what I call bedside manner. And being a therapist for so many years, I was deeply trained in ethics and boundaries with clients. And probably not a lot of spiritual healers have that. So while they may all be well intending, they may not understand how to have boundaries with themselves and with clients. And so this is something that we really have to pay attention to when we're seeking healing services and also when we are trying to connect to the universe around us. When we learn to follow and listen to our inner voice, that's the higher self, that's the spiritual side of you that can see the energy and the frequencies of the universe, that can understand what move to make and what relationships to stay in and which ones to exit. And you can tap into all of that information yourself, which is my goal, is to help people learn how to be their own healer, but also to be an example of good ethical healing practices and really listen and understand what people are dealing with. And after probably 7 or 8 years of practicing Reiki and spirituality and mediumship and reading and learning and practicing, you start to get your own healing style. And everybody's healing gifts are different. Everyone has different gifts, different ways of expressing their spirituality. And some people do like to use religion, which is great. It's not, religion has no place in spirituality. Whatever gets you there is good, as long as it's doing no harm to yourself and others. That's the biggest thing. So when I'm going to start doing these every Sunday, and I want to, get questions from you and understand What do people really want to know and understand about spirituality, about their own gifts? A lot of people want to know what happens when you die. A lot of people want to know, how is it that I'm able to connect to this life force energy? And how is it that I'm able to connect to communication with people beyond the earthly realm? And in some essence, I don't know. And in some ways, I could explain it perfectly. You know, we're not that far away from those in spirit. We're really not. It's just there's I guess, a divider between us and the spiritual world that we can choose to either remove and break through and open up to a certain point that we're comfortable with, or we can ignore all of it. Whether you explore spirituality or not isn't doesn't matter. It doesn't make you a better or worse person. What I think is important is that when you do start investigating your spirituality, you understand the starting point is you. It's not anybody else. It's not other people. It's not finding the right guru or, reading the right book. All those things are helpful, but you have the power. And any healer that, isn't interested in empowering you, I would be very skeptical of. Because what you don't want to have happen is have a dependent relationship develop where, this, you know, uh, client feels like they need to talk to you or they just can't manage. That's not good. It's not good for the person because we want to keep people free. We want to keep people free in their own selves and their own psyche and their own lives. And when you create dependency or you take advantage of someone's vulnerability, that's really, I think that's very sinful to do. So let me see. Somebody put something in the chat here. Where is my chat? Aha. Okay. Do you ever wonder what's wrong? Okay. Why do people have to put this garbage here? Okay. Listen, I'm clearing this spiritual energy, and please do not put anything offensive or rude or racist on my page. That's my boundary. Please go. Thank you. So, anyway, if you are curious in your own spirituality and tapping into the higher parts, the higher frequency. So, for example, racism is a low, low, low frequency, very low, right? Because it is hurtful, it's untrue, it's judgment, and those are things that vibrate at a very, very low frequency. Whereas when you are open and loving and accepting and don't judge people and love all people for exactly who they are, now you're operating at a really high frequency. And the higher frequency and the more loving you are, the more you operate at a higher level, the more joy and wonderful things and synchronicities unfold, as opposed to if you're depressed, if you're hateful, if you're that, you're blocking yourself from your own gifts and your own spirituality and your own beautiful life. So, if you do have real serious questions about spirituality and about how to enjoy your own gifts and your own empowerment, you've heard my story. You can think about, here I'm a professional therapist for, very well educated and practicing for many years. And I'm also a spiritual teacher and healer, but it took me, 7 years, I would say, minimum, to really explore and open up and understand. And I'm always a student of life. That never changes. No matter how much experience I have, I can always learn more. And that's the beauty of the universe and the beauty of the self, which is why I love guiding people into learning about themselves and learning about how, wonderful and magnificent and incredible we are as human beings. So, if you have ideas or questions that you'd like to tackle in this show, send me questions, write them in the chat. Like, hey, what do you know about life after death? Or, hey, I had this spiritual experience. What do you think about it? And hopefully, I can help make this a very safe place for people who are grieving, for people who are going through hard times to come and have their uh, situations supported by myself and the community we create here, and give you some good guidance onto how to continue to open up your life to more and more knowing, understanding, and beauty. So I hope you all got something out of this and found it enjoyable. If you'd like to work with me, you can contact me through my website, which is under construction right now, but you can send me messages through Facebook, um, through Instagram. You can message me. All of my links are everywhere. So you can get to my YouTube channel, to my Instagram, my Facebook, direct message me, say, hey, I'd like to set up a session. And I also have a hub on heallist.com, which is also under all my links. So you can actually book a session online with me right through that. So working with me is very easy. And I have all kinds of interesting sessions that you can do with me. I have, Reiki healing sessions. I have dance healing, dance therapy. I have regular therapy, grief therapy, and intuitive. I have packages where you can learn, you can work with me several times a week to explore your spiritual gifts. And all of it is wonderful and enriching and helpful. So I hope to meet you in a session and have you continue to pop in here whenever I go live. Usually, Spiritual Sundays is a new thing. So I love to you all. Thank you so much for being here and listening to my story. Please share and like these videos. They help me continue to spread my love and support throughout the world and the universe. And I look forward to seeing you guys here next week. Thank you. Have a beautiful spiritual Sunday.